Another great story. Welcome back to Hardball. The drumbeat of calls for Mitt Romney to release his tax returns is getting much louder and louder. So when it came time for the CNN debate last night, you'd think you'd have an answer ready to go. But instead of a clean, crisp reply, Romney waffled. Here's his response when John King asked Romney when we'd see his tax returns.
When my taxes are complete for this year, and I know that if I'm the nominee, the president's going to want to insist that I show what my income was this last year and so forth. When they're completed this year in April, I'll release my returns in April and probably for other years as well.
Why not, should the people of South Carolina, before this election, see last year's return?
Because I want to make sure that I beat President Obama. And every time we release things, drip by drip, the Democrats go out with another array of attacks, as has been done in the past. If I'm the nominee, I'll put these out at one time so we have one discussion of all of this.
Well, does Romney have something to hide? A good question. Or would he just prefer to discuss his returns, as he once said on tax policy, in a quiet room? Chris Cillizza is managing editor of thepostpolitics.com, and David Cornyn, Washington Bureau Chief for Mother Jones. Both gentlemen are MSNBC political analysts. Chris, you first. You know, this game of cat and mouse that this guy's created here, because it never was created before, everyone assumes you have to show your tax returns. It shows you've been honest. It shows you've done your tax returns. Everybody's got them. You can't be a legal citizen. You can't be a legal person in this country without having tax returns. So we know he has them. We know they exist. He refuses to show them. There's only one reason why he won't show them. He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to. Why?
Yeah, Chris, I agree with you. I mean, I've been baffled. You know, you showed the bit from CNN last night, but on Monday night, Romney was asked basically the same thing, and he again fumbled, which is odd to me because, look, this is a guy who is quite good as a debater. He clearly had to know. If he didn't know it was coming on Monday, he definitely knew it was coming last night, and yet he still kind of struggled with it. I think it has to do with him being uncomfortable in some way about his wealth, although we know he's rich. What it makes it look like, Chris, and you know perception is often reality in politics, what it makes it look like is he's hiding something. Now, I don't know that he is. Maybe he's not. But the way that he talks about it makes it look as though he is uncomfortable, he's awkward with it, that he just doesn't feel good about talking about it. It doesn't need to be a big issue. I think Mitt Romney has turned it in a little bit into an issue at the moment because of his answers in the debate Monday night and again last night.
Well, remember, Chris.
You know, it's hard. Yes.
I was just going to say, remember, back in December, when he was first asked about this, he said he probably wouldn't release his tax returns. So at that point, when it wasn't as much focus, it was clearly his inclination to try to get away without doing this. Now, he says he pays about 15%. Maybe he pays 10%, 9%. There are ways to, even if you're paying the low capital gains rates, there are ways of crediting losses against gains to really lower your taxes a lot. So I'm sure he pays his accountants a lot. He has money parked in the Cayman Islands. His campaign says there's no tax benefit to doing that. Well, then the obvious question is, why is it there? Why not put it in good old American financial institutions? And so all this, his inability to answer the question confidently last night, when he knew it was coming, indicates that something's wrong with his taxes, something's wrong with his campaign, or something's wrong with the candidate. Maybe all three.
I think it's totally fair game, particularly not only for him, because all candidates have had to do this over the years. But here's a guy who's bragged every campaign speech he gives. The focus of his campaign speech is, look at how successful I was in the private sector making money. Not doing things, but making money. Bragging about how much money he's made, how successful he's been. And again last night saying, I'm unapologetic about how much money I made. Well, here's John King noting that Romney's own father released 12 years worth of tax returns when he was a candidate because he didn't want to show that 1 year was a fluke. And then he was asked, John King put the question to Mitt, whether he'd follow in his own father's footsteps. And here was Mitt's response.
Maybe. I don't know how many years I'll release. I'll take a look at what our documents are, and I'll release multiple years. I don't know how many years, but I'll be happy to do that. And let me tell you, I know there are some who are very anxious to see if they can't make it more difficult for a campaign to be successful. I know the Democrats want to go after the fact that I've been successful. I'm not going to apologize for being successful. And I went off on my own. I didn't inherit money from my parents. What I have, I earned. I worked hard in the American way.
Let me start with David on this. Who's he arguing with then? I've never heard anybody say they got a problem with him making a lot of money. I never heard anybody say that about any candidate in history, that they made a lot of money.
Yeah.
From Roosevelt's family or the Kennedy's family or Harriman or anybody who ever thought of it had a ton of money. Nobody's ever held it against him. Arnold Schwarzenegger, nobody said you made a lot of money. Who's he arguing with? I would argue he's arguing with a straw man. He has made up this fictitious character who doesn't like he's made a lot of money. Now, what the public wants to know is, have you paid a fair tax? I think that is a legitimate question. Go ahead.
Chris, you know when a politician changes the subject, it's for a reason. He thinks he has a better argument with that false argument. But I'll take a slight issue with you. Mitt Romney, in the year of Occupy Wall Street, 4 years now after the Wall Street caused crash, he is Mr. 1%. And the whole issue of income inequality has become a more populist and more popular issue. Even the Republicans have been talking about it. So, the taxes will show to what degree he's in the 1% and to what degree he takes advantages of the rules that are really there for the top 1%. So I think there's a tremendous sensitivity here from a political point of view, which is probably justified on his part.
Chris, where are you on this? I think we agree, David and I. Where are you on this? I think it's the tax rate, the effective rate he paid. Yeah. It's going to hound him if it's too low.
I think that's the issue, Chris, because here's my thing with Romney that I honestly don't understand. It is no secret to anyone who has paid even passing attention to this race that he's wealthy. And as you point out, lots of people who run for office are quite wealthy. George W. Bush, John Kerry, Barack Obama. Now, there are differing levels of wealth, and Mitt Romney is on the higher end of that without question. But he's oddly uncomfortable with being wealthy, which is a fact everyone knows. It would be as if I would say, oh, no, ties? No, I don't know anything about ties. I have a tie on. It is a fact. It is unchangeable. It is an unchangeable fact. He needs to frame it in a way that he did a little bit, Chris. You played a little bit of that clip. The whole, I'm not going to apologize. Do that, but I do think the underlying issue, which you are right about, is not his wealth. It's the tax rate. Because if it comes out he paid 15% or less, he's paying a lot less taxes than people who made a lot less money than him. And that's just not a good political issue. But broadly, I just think he
might just
has
look
to
like a guy who likes an unfair tax system. Own your resume. From an unfair tax system.
Yeah, I just think own your resume, own your wealth,
guys.
because you're not going to be able to run away from it.
I think this story and the nude story, I would say this story is going to last longer than the nude story. Anyway, Chris Cillizza, David Corn, gentlemen, have a nice weekend.